Leo Fein, and I live in the village of Centerville in the town of Barnstable. Yes, I mean, Lenny, my memories are related mostly to my kids. And as we shared, they gave me a great run of athletic prowess, if you will, in several sports. And dealing with the restaurant that I had was just a thrill in the town of Barnstable, which was in Hyannis, actually. And just moving back here I lived in 13 cities. And my teammates at Northeastern always said I was going to return to the Cape because I played ball down here and I loved it. I visited the Cape many times, worked in the restaurants here when I was breaking college, and ended up back here in 1983, and I haven't left since. So it's those memories itself, startup, having businesses, raising my children here, I think have been a joy, an absolute joy. Yes. Sean actually played 14 years in France after he graduated from Georgia Tech.
In basketball?
In basketball. And Mickey actually went to the University of Maine. He was a quarterback there, set 16, still holds, I think, something like 16 records. Had a fabulous career there and went on to play in the Arena League for 2 years. Got injured, seriously injured with his knee, had to quit, and ended up coaching. And he is still now coaching. He's now the offensive coordinator at Lafayette College. But he's coached at Murray State in Kentucky, coached at several other schools, Maine being one, and actually came back to after he was doing the Arena League, he actually coached Barnstable High School. He was their offensive coordinator under Spanky the year that they won the state championship. So got some great memories, and frankly, a lot of them are about the athletic prowess because it took a lot of my time. Yeah, actually, it's kind of a fun story, Lenny, because I went to Northeastern on a football scholarship. And I realized while I was there playing freshman ball, that there were two guys in the big team, if you will, that were certainly I was a running back. And a guy named Bob Capadonna went on to play for the Patriots and the Buffalo Bills, and a guy named Jimmy Thornton, who I actually played with in high school. I was behind in high school. He was a senior, I was a sophomore, and I just looked at those two guys and said, I'm not going to play. So I went down to the hall, to the baseball coach, who was then the backfield coach. Back then, you did a lot of things. You didn't have 8 coaches on each sport. So I went down and told him, I said, Tinker, his name was Tinker Conley, and I said, I'm not going to play. I really don't want to. Those guys were the same year I was. I didn't want to kick in 3 years. I said, I still got the arm, so what do you think? He said, I can transfer you over. He said, Joe Zabilski's not going to like this, but I think it'll be a good fit for us. So, and off we went. I had a great career at Northeastern, and finalizing with, frankly, the 1966 team was the only team in the history of Northeastern University, still is, ever to go to the College World Series. So we're pretty excited about that, and I was the captain of that team, which is certainly nice. I think it was only because I was the oldest member. But yeah, that's quite a memory that we had going out to Omaha, to Rosenblatt Stadium. You just can't buy that. And then back then we had, we only played like 28 games and no trip south. None of the furthest south we went was South Boston, I think. Furthest north was up in Maine. And now we look at, what's going on with people taking a month or 6 weeks down in Florida, et cetera. But the point of my story is that we get out to Omaha and we played St. John's in the first game. We lost 2-1, which was a heartbreaker. St. John's in New York, who played like 45 games. And then the second game was Oklahoma State. And they announced our record, which I think was 28-7, some silly like that. And then Oklahoma State was 84-3 or something. And they had Sal Bando and Reggie Jackson back then. So we took our licking 2 games and came home. And actually, we actually did our final exams out there. Northeastern was not going to allow us to go unless we did our finals. in a timely fashion. So we actually had to take our final exams out there, which was not fun. So yeah, it was a great thrill. We had a chain of 9 supper clubs, we called them back then, in the 70s and early 80s. We had a great run for about 15 years. Started in Washington, D.C. Actually, my partner was a guy named Franny O'Brien, and we used to call the places Fran O'Brien's. And he played for the Redskins for 11 years, went to college at Michigan State, and pretty popular guy around town. And we started there, and we opened 9 around the country. And I finalized out opened one in Detroit. It went well. Then we went to Pittsburgh, to Annapolis, Maryland, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, Fort Lauderdale, and I'm running out of names because I can't remember them all. We did well for about 15 years. And then a little thing called disco came along. And frankly, we didn't adjust quickly enough to the disco, and our business slid dramatically. But it was a great run for 15 years. But I went back to Detroit with one of the former partners who opened a restaurant downtown Detroit. And we did that for 5 years. And then I was kind of like tired of it, and I wanted to come back east. And a restaurant in the Chart House Village back then called Flounders was in one of the trade magazines. And I called a friend of mine, Tom Maloney, who used to run the Heritage House. He and I were classmates. We actually played football together at St. Mary's of Brookline. And he thought it was a great place. He thought it would be great. I came out and looked at it. I picked up a partner, a guy named Jim Daly, who was excited about not only getting me back, but to get into the business. He lived in Oyster Harbors, and so we had a close relationship. And we made a deal with the Foster brothers, who opened a lot of restaurants in Florida, still there, very successful. And we really came back to do that. And as I said, it was a great thrill for me to come to the Cape, which I had great memories of, and to start a business. We had that for 5 years, 6 years, 5.5 years, I believe it was. And things didn't go as well as we wanted, and decided to move along. We sold the restaurant. And that's really the history of it. I know you were a customer there and a friend, and back then you were a chamber guy, and that's when I joined the chamber and started that part of what we did. Yeah, we opened another restaurant down on Ocean Street called Whatchamacallit's Pub and Grub, which it really did very well the first year, and the hotel switched over to do timeshare, and they got into some financial trouble, and frankly they went bankrupt, and kind of sitting there myself figuring, okay, now what are we going to do? And a good friend of mine, Jim Hegarty, told me, he said, the mall's looking for a manager. And I said, what the hell do I know about running a mall? He said, you're perfect. He gave me all my elements of all my wonderful things that I could do. And I said, what the hell? I threw a resume. And at the meantime, I had a purchase and sale in a restaurant in Florida, in Lauderdale by the Sea. And so I just threw my resume in for giggles, really. And all of a sudden, I got notified that I was one of the 3 finalists. And my wife and I were driving by the mall, and I had the kids in the back seat, and I said, what are we going to do if I get this job? So lo and behold, they offered me the position. I took it, and it was just a great decision, a great opportunity, and I had a lot of fun for a long time. It's kind of a dream job, if you will, and saw the elements of growth that the mall started, and I was part of all that. And looking back, it was a great memory. Actually, it was 70, let's see, 83, 85. So it was 87 to 90. Actually, no, it was 90, yeah, 89, 90, 91. We had approximately 60 stores when I took it over, approximately, give or take. And I call them retail outlets because we did have things called kiosks and push carts, and they were all qualified as retailers in the mall. And I was there for 5 years, working for the Mugars and the Davenports. And Steve Karp and David Mugar went to high school together. And Steve Karp is the owner and was the owner and president and chairman of New England Development. And he convinced David Mugar that because he only had one center, that he wouldn't have any influence over leasing because the market became to the big guys. And they weren't interested in talking. He didn't have any leverage. So he convinced Mugar to come in with him. And Steve Karp took a management contract for the Cape Cod Mall as part of New England Development that had 14 or 15 malls back then. And consequently, I had to rotate in as the general manager, which was a whole other story. But you know, they took me on, and New England Development was there for about 7 years, 6 years, 7 years. And that grew the leasing part. And then Steve, in his infinite wisdom, decided that he wanted to expand the mall. And that became a real trip. Because it was there were in the demographics then, where there were approximately 125,000 people a year leaving the mall to shop another, not the mall, but the Cape to shop in other malls because we didn't have the stores that, you know, popular stores, the Gaps, you know, all the things that the stores that were really hot back then, and people were leaving to go to those stores in South Shore Plaza and other centers that were drivable, if you will, within the hour. So consequently, we had the Woolworth store back then, if you remember that. It was 50,000 square feet. And that was the first thing that was going to be demolished, and which now sits what we call the fashion wing, which really took place right where Woolworth was. And so the expansion was about 240,000 square feet, and we added approximately 30 stores, 35 stores, to get us up to about 100 retail establishments, adding more kiosks, et cetera, small, what we call wall kiosks. And that took 3 years. It was from planning to finish. And the element of dealing with the Cape Cod Commission, with the town of Barnstable, and the different elements of development that you have to go through was a learning experience for me. It was a very frustrating learning experience. And I'm sure Steve Karp felt the same way, along with his planners, developers, et cetera. It was 3 years of going through it and sitting in this room, meeting after meeting after meeting, trying to get everybody to understand. And certainly you understand that the towns, this was a big deal, and the town wanted to make it right. So consequently, the professionals, the professional development people that Steve brought in were incredible. They knew how to operate within the town's parameters. They knew all the rules, and they tried to adhere to them, and they tried to cave as much as they could to make sure that there wasn't any kind of this going on. So consequently, it became a situation that the Cape Cod Mall brought in the stores. The first store I remember was Eddie Bauer that came into what we call that fashion wing, and all of a sudden Banana Republic came, and et cetera, all what it's there now, Ann Taylor, Loft, and consequently we started to recapture those people that were leaving the Cape. And our sales per square foot went up dramatically after we had done that. So the Little Sleepy Mall became a competitive situation where people stopped leaving the Cape, as I said, and we had offered them places, we had offered them restaurants now that they could shop in and wanted to go to. So the food court became a meeting place. Even though it was a meeting place in the old center, we increased by 2 restaurants in the food court, and it became a great place to eat because we offered Chinese, pizza, McDonald's back then, et cetera. So we had all the restaurants too that would attract folks. So that's. Our annual traffic count was 8.1 million. People came through that door. Now, You know, how can we break that down? There's really a difficult way because, you know, we used to have traffic counters and things like that, but those things have gone away because they're a fictitious number because there's so many repeats, employees and everybody else. It was tough to, but that was the actual count that we went around to stores who actually keep daily counts of their visits by customers. Well, the interesting part of that, Lenny, is, and people don't understand this, or when I go out and we used to call canvassing around the Cape, and I'd go off Cape to try to find new retailers, is that what we found is Main Street merchants do not go to the mall, and mall merchants do not go to Main Street because of the element of drawing people in the volume that they have to do to make things work. And why don't Main Street merchants want to go to the mall? Because of the hours, number one. Number two, a lot of them have got their own little dig. They and another employee, et cetera, are running that store, and they didn't have the ability to expand, and nor did they want the management angle to offer and have other employees running their product. They settled down on Main Street, and you know what? It's still going on. You know, the Mitchell's place and et cetera, et cetera. I can name probably 15 right off the bat that I've approached that just said, no, we really don't want to do the hours. We don't want to do 7 days. We want to be able to close for a month, which the mall has demands in how many hours you operate. Everybody has to be open particular hours, open at the same time, close at the same time. And we're open 7 days a week on into this. There's no, I think it's down to Christmas and Easter. Easter are the only 2 days that they close now. It's a cute story because Fugawi back then was I won't say an infant sailboat race, but it was a good sailboat race that, for those who don't know, for 42 years now, it's 43 years, always Memorial Day weekend, sailors go to Nantucket with a race, which is a handicap race. But I'm not answering your question, but I will tell you that the reason I got involved was that they used to have their board of directors meeting at Flounders. So I got to we had a little back room, and I got to know all the guys, obviously. And then all of a sudden, I think it was about 2 years into it, they said, you know a lot about us. Would you like to join as one of our board people? And I said, sure. And at that time, it was the start of the Fugawi Charity Ball, which Joe Hoffman felt that Fugawi needed an uplifting of their image. And he thought a charity situation would help. I mean, Fugawi was known back then as a drunken sailboat race. And that image is certainly over the years is slowly disseminated to basically everyone understands that we're a charitable organization now. And the ball was the start of that. And my wife and I chaired it for 19 years. My wife, Susan, I better get that name in there because she'll be mad at me if I don't. And brought it into a major fundraiser for the Cape. It depends on the success. We're over $3 million at this point. We basically have an application on our website. I get approximately 60 to 70 requests. All the money stays on Cape Cod. That's one of our requirements. We do not even give anybody that isn't a Cape Cod charity any space, if you will. We don't. And we have a committee of 4 of us that goes through all the applications. We do ask for people to tell us what they're going to do with the money. We don't give cash typically. We'll buy computers, we'll fix roofs, we'll do the things that we think that the charity needs. And it's been a great humbling experience for us to see things like the Circle of Giving at the Rehabilitation Center in Sandwich. That we paid for the Circle of Giving. You buy a brick in there, and they cost so much money, and I think we paid $35,000 to them. And if and when all the bricks are sold, it's $500,000 back to them. Those are the kind of things that we're very proud of. We built the Children's Cove. We built a playground for the kids there to go to. Cape Cod Hospital, we're involved in the pavilion for children, and on and on. I mean, it could take up an hour telling you all the success stories that we've had. We recently are one of the sponsors of the Holiday Heroes, which is a contingent of wounded warriors that a group from Nantucket takes Memorial Day weekend, July 4th, and Labor Day weekends, and they bring in families of wounded warriors and give them a vacation on Nantucket for the weekend. Parades are given. In Fagawi now they sail. This is be the third year that the folks that have lost limbs, etc., we actually get them on a sailboat, and they have a blast. It's just a wonderful experience.
That as well, wasn't it?
Sure did. I was actually on the board of the Hyannis Area Chamber, and I was thinking my job as, I forget what my title was, I was vice president or something, and my job was to bring, I had offered to bring a major act to Hyannis, to the Village Green. And I'm thinking Barbra Streisand, the Beach Boys, you know, those kind of things. And Mark Snyder called me, who was also on our committee. He used to own Cape Cod Railroad. And he said, "Hey, Leo, what do you think about the Pops?" And I said, "What about the Pops?" He said, "To be the act to come to Hyannis." And I said, "Whoa, that's a great idea." I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Well, I guess he was an uncle. My uncle, a guy named Chet Kruntzman, was the president of the Pops, the person that got the money and whatever we call him. And he, you know, we can take a look and go up and visit him." So we did. Ted Nelson was then the president of the chamber. You were involved then still as the director, correct? Yeah.
Right.
And we went up and visited with Chet Kruntzman, and things led to things, and we put a committee together, and I'm trying to remember the person that headed it up. He was
Tell me about John Holland.
John Holland. Oh, he was good for you. He was one of the four. It was Ted, myself, Mark Snyder, and we brought in John Holland because we were thinking he could sponsor it. John Holland owned the McDonald's of Cape Cod, and a great guy, wonderful guy, God rest his soul. But he was the guy that came up with the idea of don't bring in one sponsor, don't hit me for it all. Go to the town, sell some tables, get some small sponsors, get a lot of small sponsors, and get the town people involved in this event, because then it'll be better. And that's what we did. John back then, I think he gave us $25,000. And the fun part of the Kruntzman ad, we went back up there and we were going through the process of getting the Pops. And we were about to sign the contract, and we wanted to figure out what the cost was. And back then it was $66,000, and which we all sat back and went, whoa. And then it was continual, and we said, well, what about the conductor? John Williams. And he said, well, he's an additional 35. So we said, Harry Ellis Dixon will do just fine. And if you guys ever remember that Harry Ellis Dixon was the conductor for, gosh, I want to say 15 or so years. And that's really how it all started. I mean, guys that the Chases came in, Olive and Dave Chase came in, and I was in charge of the food, beverage, and several other things. But they came in and we started the mocktail party because you couldn't serve liquor on the town green. And we did that the night before, and we had an immense amount of people that just contributed. We went to Stop and Shop up in Boston area, sat there and just begged, and they gave us peanuts and chips and tons of stuff, and gave it to Olive. Olive put it together in these beautiful, which I went over to Doreen Belzekian, visited her. She donated the baskets for the tables. And the town was just immensely interested in helping the Pops, and I don't think anybody ever said no to us. I mean, it was a reasonable deal. We were asking for $1,000, I think, back then for a table. It might have been a little less, but and I think the first year we had 40-something tables, 50 tables, and we drew probably 6,000 to 8,000 people. But Lanny Chase was our director of sponsorship. And by the way, Lanny's coming to this event because it's number 30 this year. And we're going to have a blast with that. But Lanny was the guy that we had 3 weeks to go, I think, somewhere in that range. And we were short like $16,000, which meant we had to come up with the money. And Lanny, within the 3 weeks, raised 16 plus, another 11. He raised 27, I think it was 27,000. And at the end of it, we gave away, I think it was $10,000. Back then, the YMCA was doing the swimming pool. And we were able to give them the money. They were our primary beneficiary. And that's where it kicked off. Yeah. I've always had that, because I paid attention to them. I mean, it was Hyannis Chamber. All the way down recently, I was on the building committee for the new fire station. Fagawi certainly became a household name. And I was the face of them all, and have been. There's no question about it. And consequently, I got to meet an awful lot of people. And I still retain a lot of those relationships, and as you said, it always seems to be that I'm on every board or somewhere, you see my face or I'm involved with things. And I have been all through there because, and I shared with this comment with you, I didn't know how to say no. So, and then my wife got involved with a lot of stuff, and we're thrilled that we were able to participate, number one, in all the things that we were able to do, and meet all the people in this town that we're proud of, and it's been a great run. I had surgery. I had a piece of my colon taken out, and I was lying in bed, and I realized how old I was, and this ride can't continue forever. The pressures of the job became things that you go every day, and I picked a good time after the winter we just had, because there isn't a worse situation than those kind of storms for the snow removal and stuff like that. It's quite a compliment of why I wanted to do it, and it was time. I mean, I can't say it any clearer than that. It was time to retire. Yeah, my retirement lasted one day. She has 2 stores, one in Centerville in the town of Barnstable, called Fein Things, card and gift stores. And we opened one in July in South Dennis in the Patriot Square. Another one, the bigger store, actually called Fein Things, that actually she managed as a Hallmark store for 17 years for Jim Haggerty, rises again. And decided that it was going to be a good opportunity, so we jumped in on that. So I am now working in the stores little by little. I don't do a lot. My goal is to try to take a lot of pressure off her, if you will, the administrative part. And I still work to register too. I'm in one of the stores every day. Maybe not for a whole day, but I'm in there. So it's been fun. It's been fun for us. They actually, in fairness to them, they made their own paths off. One of the greatest things that, and I used to laugh at this, I used to go to the BC football games, and there was a guy named O'Brien there who had 2 sons on scholarship at BC, and I used to call him the luckiest SOB in the country. And it ends up that both my kids ended up on full scholarships, athletic scholarships, and consequently, took them away. Sean ended up at Georgia Tech. Mickey ended up at the University of Maine, then played some professional ball. Sean, after finishing at Georgia Tech, went to Europe for 14 years. Well, coming back here to what? I mean, that's really wasn't the, they're now into coaching professional teams. Mickey is the offensive coordinator at Lafayette College. That's in Pennsylvania. He has to go where the jobs are. Sean had to go where the jobs are. Actually, Sean now is with the Celtics development team in Portland, Maine. He's actually in a low-rung situation, but it's an opportunity. But again, he's in Portland, Maine. He has a house in Atlanta. So in fairness to that, what are they going to do here? They have now chosen a career for coaching that's away. There's nothing here that they could get that would first give them the income that would suffice or make them want to be back here. They've found opportunities in other places. Yeah, and we visit them and they visit here. My oldest son Mickey and I share the same birthday, so we have a reunion week in July where they come, both of them come, they stay at the house, and we enjoy we have a couple of grandkids, and we enjoy what they had and they know they had with Cape Cod. They still have a lot of friends here which they come and visit as well, which is kind of fun. My name is Leo Fein. I live in the village of Centerville in the town of Barnstable.